So yesterday I told you we would talk about this today, and now I want to. There are starting to be numerous reports where the headline is the Russia-Ukraine war, the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, could last 10 to 20 years. And I think it's important to understand that it wouldn't be 10 to 20 years like the last 6 days, but it's still important to understand sort of what's at stake here. There's an interesting article in The Week called U.S. and Britain reportedly believe Ukraine war could last 10 to 20 years and become a Russian quagmire. And if you look at the details, it says, despite Moscow's shambolic start to its campaign, most Western officials and analysts believe Russia will turn to criminal siege tactics and eventually find a way to break through Ukraine's fierce and valiant resistance. A U.S. official tells CBS News Russia could tactically seize Kyiv and Ukraine in 4 to 6 weeks. So in terms of like now, 4 to 6 weeks is being mentioned. But as this goes on, the UK Foreign Secretary estimated it would be a 10-year war. Lawmakers at the Capitol were told Monday it is likely to last 10, 15, or 20 years and that ultimately Russia will lose. Now, of course, when you're thinking about those timeframes, we are talking about protracted sort of separatist type conflicts in border areas, not 10 to 20 years of nightly bombing of Kyiv. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be absolutely horrifying. Here's a little bit of a discussion about this from earlier this week.
But this is only going to get uglier for the president of the United States and for the people of Ukraine. Members of Congress briefed that this war could go on 10, 20 years. This could end up being an albatross for the President Biden and his presidency dealing with this.
It absolutely could be. And we are watching live broadcast on television a human rights catastrophe. So for the president who has said he's putting human rights back at the center of the agenda, he's also drawn a very bright line to say we won't use military force to defend it. We will if you go a little bit farther west and touch our NATO allies. But the criticism has been such a bright line can actually encourage Vladimir Putin to know the limits.
So that is a question that is increasingly coming up, which is, well, is Joe Biden potentially going to have to go back on that? But the main thing I want to focus on, and I don't believe that he will, on troops on the ground. I think he's not going to do it. There's a separate economic question here, which is, can the Russian economy support a conflict for 10 or 20 years? And the answer is what many economic analysts are saying. And of course, economic analyst predictions are worth what most of us pay for them, which is nothing. But the idea that the damage economically that Russia will take if there are 4 to 6 more weeks of this itself may take 10 to 20 years to recover from. And when you think about, well, if that's the case, and where will Putin be in 10 or 20 years' time? We don't even know if he's sick now, as increasingly is being discussed. If it's going to be bad regardless, it's not a disincentive to just continue fighting for Russia. Now, I think the more likely scenario is this does not last as a war for 10 years, but it's the 4 to 6 weeks that's being discussed. But the economic repercussions do extend to a decade, and beyond a decade, who can predict? But certainly, that is plausible. Look at Venezuela, right? I mean, they're not fighting a war, but they've had a disastrous economic collapse and they survive. But there's a question as to what can a society sustain for these periods of time? And isolated countries survive. It's a matter of how much do the people suffer? How much are the Russian people willing or able to put up with? And if you go back to the collapse of the Soviet Union, that was one of the most rapid declines in standard of living and quality of life that countries have faced. And what's happening in Russia, I don't want to say it would be equivalent, but it would be probably the biggest similar decline, or even close to, in scope and size. And, you look at the collapse of the USSR, and you're talking about decreased life expectancy and all of these other things. So when we say 10 to 20 years, I mean, listen, like every other prediction, take it with a grain of salt, but understand it could be bad for 10 to 20 years in Russia economically. It's not going to be 10 to 20 years of what we've all been watching on TV for 6 days. That is not possible, but many other things could last that long.